This section will cover the self-disassembly process of the CK1000 Kobelco crane using the optional self-assembly sheave. The boom point section may also be used to remove and handle the main counterweights. For an easier disassembly process, place the machine on a firm, level supporting surface. Place the block and ball on the ground and lower the boom close to the ground. It will now be necessary to change the LMI setting into the setup mode. This is done by pushing the button on the LMI showing the boom being taken apart and hold it for 3 seconds. Remove the cable and wedge sockets and disassemble them. Unreeve the hoist cable from the load block and remove anti-2 block weights from the cables and limit switches. Wind up the anti-2 block cable on the reel at the boom base section. Then slowly wind hoist cable while keeping the wire rope tight on the drum. Secure the hoist cables to the drum so the cable does not become loose. Now lower the boom to the ground. Raise the spreader guides on the boom base up to the working position. Lower the boom hoist wire rope to set the spreader into the spreader bracket and secure it with pins. Tighten the boom hoist wire rope to remove the load from the bottom pins on the boom base section. Lower the spreader guides back to transport position. Then remove the bottom connecting pins first. Both ends of these pins are tapered, so the pins can be removed while standing safely outside the boom. Stand clear when removing any boom connecting pins because it is possible for the boom to suddenly shift as they are being removed. Now, lower the boom down onto wooden blocking. Remove the top boom connecting pins and disconnect the guide cables at the spreader. We are now able to back the crane away from the boom. We will now demonstrate using the crane for self-disassembly. This can be done by using the optional self-assembly sheave or by installing the boom point section. If the track frames must be removed to reduce the transport weight, then the self-assembly head must be used. Use the lugs on the boom base to position the self-assembly sheave or boom point for installation. Travel the machine to the self-assembly sheave and align the pin locations. Install the connecting pins and use the double taper pins on the bottom. Run the cable from the front drum down through the center sheaves. Then feed the cable through the load block, and then through the block. Now install the anti-2 block weight on the hoist cable. Install the hoist cable into the wedge socket and pin it to the mounting location. Run the anti-2 block cable to the limit switch connector. Be sure and reconnect the cable at the reel. Now pull the anti-2 block limit switches by hand and confirm that the anti-2 block error code on the LMI is eliminated. We are now ready to remove the counterweights. Boom up and attach the sling to the first car body weight. Lift the weight from the frame bracket. Repeat the same process on the second car body weight. Now disconnect the wire connectors to the swing lights and flashers. Remove the 2 outside counterweight bolts. Then raise the boom up to about 65 degrees. Remove the red backstop lock and place them around the inner backstop tubes. Raise the boom to about 78 degrees to align the pinholes on the inner and outer backstop tubes. Install the locking pins and put the caution flag in place as a reminder to the operator that the backstops are locked. This process has locked the boom into place and will allow the gantry to raise and lower with the boom control function. Disconnect 2 gantry cylinders at the rod end and lower them by moving the gantry control switch in the cab to the lower position. Lower the boom hoist to remove the load from the gantry tension member pins. Remove the pins and store them on holders mounted on the gantry. Shut down the engine and connect the gantry cylinder's control box cord to the receptacle on the right side of the crane. Unhinge the linkage on the travel kit links and cylinders so that they will hang free during lowering. The extra link on the counterweight cylinders is not used when removing the number 3 counterweight. Unpin this first link and set it aside. Lower the boom hoist as needed to make the connection to the number 3 counterweight. Raise the counterweights with the cylinders, using the control box to clear the mount on the number 2 weight. Now lower the boom hoist to place the weight on the ground. The cylinders are controlled independently, so keep the weight level from side to side. Now connect the link extensions to the cylinders and remove the number 2 weight in the same manner. We are now able to remove the other 2 mounting bolts on the number 1 weight. Raise the boom hoist to make the connection on the number 1 weight. Lift the counterweight from bracket on main frame with cylinders. Use boom control to lower the weight to ground. Now raise the gantry and install the tension member locking pins. Raise the gantry cylinder rods and connect them to the gantry. Secure the transport links and cylinders to the gantry. Slowly raise boom hoist to remove tension from backstop locking pins, and then remove pins and caution flag. Lower boom to about 65 degrees and remove backstop locks and place them back on holders. Do not leave the red backstop locks on for normal crane operation. This can cause catastrophic damage to the boom and backstops. The machine can now be used to separate the boom section and move counterweights as needed for storage or to place on transport trucks. We will now make the main machine ready for transport. The self-assembly sheave may remain on the boom base during transport if needed. Otherwise, lower the boom and place the block on the ground again. Set LMI into setup mode. Push the button on the LMI that has the picture of the crane with the boom apart and hold it for 3 seconds. Disconnect the wedge socket and roll cable onto the drum. Secure cable at base section or on drum. Disconnect the anti-2 block cable and roll up onto the reel at the bottom base. Connect the bypass plug to cable end at the anti-2 block reel. Lower the self-assembly sheave to the ground and remove the lower double taper pins first. Then remove the top connecting pins. We will now lower the gantry from the working position down to the transport position. Unhinge the linkage on the travel kit links and cylinders so they hang free during lowering. Operate gantry control switch inside cab to remove load from tension member pins. Remove gantry tension member pins and place them onto the holding brackets. Now, lower the gantry by activating the control switch in the cab and lowering the boom hoist wire rope at the same time. Be careful not to allow too much slack in the wire rope, or it could become loose on the drum. Install the brackets and cylinders to the frames for transport. Pin tension member to the main frame to secure gantry for transport. We will now retract the crawler frames. Remove the track frame shims from each axle extension. It may be required to swing machine to shift the weight off the shims. Remove the track frame locking pins and place them in the adjacent hole. Activate the retracting control lever inside the cab. Make sure all 4 of the locking pins fall into place and lock the slide links. Remove the side frame extension axles. And make sure to engage the swing house lock and all mechanical drum locks. The CK1000 is now ready for transport.